Hey, so let's start. So in the previous classes, we have gone through the basics of AWS, how AWS global infrastructure has been put up in place. And then we started with one of the service that is a global in nature, that is IAM. So we have seen how we can create users, how we can create groups, what are the permission policies, and how to create the policy, how to assign it to the user, and what is a what type of different type of policies are there. There are AWS managed policy, AWS managed policy, and there is you can create your own custom policies as well. So we will continue from there on. So now we have created users and group. Now it is the time for us to protect these users and group from being compromised. Now, when you create a user, you are setting up the username and the password. So your password can be compromised. So for this, we have two defense mechanisms. The first one is to define what we call it as a password policy. Now, the stronger the password you use, the more security you have for your account. So for that purpose, you can select a password policy. So in AWS, we can set up a password policy with different options. The first one is you can set a minimum password length. Okay. Uh, like your password should not be less than 8 characters or should not be less than 10 characters, something like that. Then you can require a specific character types. For example, you may want to have an uppercase letter, lowercase letter, number, non-alphanumerical character. So for example, a question mark and so on. Then you can allow all the IAM users to change their own password and requires users to change their password after some time, so that to say every 90 days users have to change their password. Finally, you can also prevent reuse so that users, when they change their password, don't change it to the one but what they already have, or change it to the one they had before. So this is great. A password policy really is helpful against the brute force attacks on your account. So how we are going to set up a password policy? We need to log into our AWS account. So you need to go to account settings. I am currently in the IAM console. Just a second. Yeah. I am in the IAM console now. So there is in the account setting, there is something called as a password policy. Now, this is a default password policy, which says never expire the password, must not be identical to your AWS account name or the email address, but we can edit it. So this is the IAM default, but you can create your custom password policies as well, which says the minimum number is 12 characters, for example, and you can require at least one uppercase letter, require at least one lowercase letter, require at least one number, one non-alphanumerical character, and then we have turn on the password notification. You can set up, let's say your password is going to expire in 90 days, and after 90 days you need to change your password. Password expiration requires administrator reset. In that case, you cannot change your password. Once your password is expiring, then your admin can only change the password. Allow users to change your own password and prevent password reuse. So remember, like previous 5 password. So you cannot reuse from your previous 5 passwords. Yes. Okay. So
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying, like, so these are the settings you are doing on the root account.
Yeah, it's in the root account. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Abdullah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. So yeah, this settings you are going to have in the root account, not with the IAM users. Then we have there is a second defense mechanism that we need to know going into the exam, and this is the multi-factor authentication, or we say MFA. It is possible we are already using it multi-factor authentication at multi places on some of the website, but on AWS it's a must and it's a very recommended to use it. So currently you have seen we have created a user Albert, and that we have the username and the password for that user, and with the help of username and the password we can log in to this user's account. Now, if your password is compromised, right, then your account will be compromised. Anyone can have access to your account. They can do
Hey,
anything.
what's up? This ma
Yes, Saroj?
Hey, Rochak,
Mm-hmm.
is this only for me or all of us that your sound is breaking? I don't know. I mean, is that
Yeah,
something only for me or other guys also experiencing something?
yeah,
It's
it is.
breaking. Your sound breaking.
Okay. Let me connect my audio set again. Just give me a second. Hello, is it better somewhat?
Yeah, I think so for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So we were talking about the MFA. So yesterday we have created an account, and that account has the username and the password. Now, if someone has get hold on of your password, they can log into your account and they can virtually do anything with your account, right? So user has access to your account, and you can possibly change configuration or delete resources in, in your AWS account. Now you want to protect your root account and IAM users. So this setting you can apply not only on the root user, but this setting you can allow for all the individual users on. So multi-factor authentication is you need to authenticate yourself not only with the password but additionally with something, some security device you own. So if there is a user, first they need to give the password, then they need to give the multi-factor authentication. So it's like two layer of authentication with the password. The benefit of the multi-factor authentication is if someone get hold of your password also, they will not be able to access your AWS account because they do not have the your MFA authentication mechanism with them. So that is the main advantage of the multi-factor authentication. Now there is multiple methods of implementing the MFA in AWS. So like there is virtual MFA device. We have you guys probably using the Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. Then there is something called Authy. So these are like the software, or we can say the virtual MFA devices that we can use with our AWS account. Then you have something called the hardware MFA devices. So YubiKey and secure token. So these will be your hardware devices that you need to purchase and set up with your AWS account. So hardware key mobile device provided by some third party. So there are multiple type of hardware key is available. You need to set up your hardware key with AWS to use it. Okay, so I'll show you how we are going to set up the multi-factor authentication. So let's say this is the user. Okay, let me log out from this user. So currently, if you need to log in, I will go to users, go to security credential. Here will be the console sign-in link for your IAM users. Basically, this is just added with the your account ID. Now, IAM username was Albert, and the password that we used is, I will put up the password. Now you see, with the username and the password, we can easily log in. So if someone get hold of your password, your account will be compromised. So what we need to do in that case is, I'll go to IAM users, and there is something called the multi-factor authentication. Okay, so you need to click on the assign MFA device. So here you can see there is authenticator app, there is security key, there is hardware TOTP token. So there is multiple type of device you can select. If you probably in your organization, when you implement the multi-factor authentication, either they will give you the security key or the hardware token, or authenticator app is also just fine. Okay, so let's say I'm giving the name auth, anything you can give, and I'm giving an authenticator app. Next. So what you need to do is, I install a compatible application on Google Authenticator, Duo Mobile, Authy app on your mobile device on computer, and open your Authenticator app, choose show QR code, and once you scan this code that is being there in a device, your Authenticator app will give you. So what I am doing currently is, from my Authenticator app, I opened the Google Authenticator app and I'm scanning this QR code. Once you scan this QR code, there will be, this account will be added to your Authenticator app, and you will get some of the MFA code 733, and after 30 seconds or so, I'll get another MFA code. This is 514661. Now add MFA. Now say you can register up to 8 MFA device of any combination of currently supported type with your AWS account root and IAM users. So if you go Access Advisor, security credentials. Now you say multi-factor authentication is applied. Now if I go here and sign out, and we'll try to do the sign in again. Now you see it is asking me for the MFA code, right? So even someone has my password, they need to give this code, otherwise they will not be able to log in, right? So now this code has with my mobile. So until unless they are not getting both of the thing, the attackers cannot get access to my AWS account. So that's the benefit of the multi-factor authentication. With the multi-factor authentication, you increase the security of your AWS account. So
Quick
that is,
question.
yep.
So you assign that multi-factor authenticator from the root user to that to this user, right?
Correct.
You applied
Yeah.
that
Right
this
now,
user,
yes.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. So once you did that, that other user gonna get an email. They need to set it up, right? And they're gonna.
Okay. So I'll tell you.
Is
Yes. I'll come to your question. That's a very good question, actually. See what happened right now. This is root user, and this is your Albert user, right? So you can do set up the MFA from here. Root basically can do anything, but you can set up MFA from here as well. Okay, so basically you can set up your own MFA device as well. But why we have not done it? Because your Albert user does not have the required permissions. So if you go to IAM, so you see this user does not have the required permission. Otherwise, you can set up your own MFA as well. But if the root is so if the root is giving the permission, then yes, you will get some notification in form of email or something.
Okay, so is there any way, enforce, okay, I'm creating this user and this user need to do the multi-factor authenticator. So can you apply that rules when you create that account, right?
Yes, yes. So there you can go to permission policies and there will be policies related to MFA and IAM. You generally give those permission, and then after that, that user will be able to do the multi-factor authentication for themselves.
Okay.
See, in AWS, what the thing you can do is everything depend on the permissions. So if I'll give you, let's say, for example, admin permission, you can do anything. So either you can do it from the root or your own user. If you have the permission, you will be able to do it. If you do not have the right permission, you will not be able to do it. That's the thumb rule.
Now, I was thinking like, okay, when you create the account, user account, there should be some sort of, check mark saying, hey, this user need to create the multi-factor authenticator.
Okay, no. So once you create the account, the only check mark is you need to have the multi-factor authentication for this root user.
Right.
That is the security best practice. But after how many users are you creating, it's up to you if you want to have the multi-factor authentication or not. Okay. So if I, let's say example, if I go to dashboard, here it says security recommendation, root user has the MFA, right? So this is a security recommendation because root user is a very important user because it has all the admin privileges.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Now, how you are going to access your AWS account, right? So we have seen how to access AWS using the management console. That is a like your graphical user interface. It's like you are logging to Gmail, you are logging to Facebook. Similarly, we are logging here. You have your username and the password, and you go to the website, and there you are logging to your AWS account. And once login, you can see what all the things are there in your AWS account. But there are other ways also by which you can actually log into your account. So first is AWS Management Console that we are already seeing. Now the second is protected by the password and MFA. MFA is an optional thing. So if you have your username and the password, you can log in to your AWS Management Console and you can log in. Now the second and third way is AWS command line interface and AWS software development kit. So AWS command line interface, this is something we will set up on our own computer, and this is protected by something called as the access keys. And access keys are our credential we are going to download, right? So, and finally there is SDK, the AWS software development kit, which is used whenever we want to call APIs from AWS from within your application code. Okay, so let's say you are writing an software, and from that software you want to call an API to create an EC2 instance. So for that we are going to use this AWS SDK. Second option, CLI, is we generally use when we are doing some automation and all of those things. So whatever things we are doing from the management console, we can do all of those things from the AWS command line interface as well. And for that, you need to install AWS CLI on your local system. Once you install the AWS CLI, then you can connect to AWS account with your credentials, that is the access key. So we'll see that. Now, access key, how you are going to generate the access key. Access keys are managed through the AWS console. So to create the AWS keys, okay, you need to go to console. So if you log in for the very first time, you have to go to the console, create your access keys, and then you can log in via the AWS CLI. Users can manage their own access keys, or root user can create the access keys for them. Access keys are like secret, just like a password. So in access key, there will be two things: access key ID and the secret access key. So it is basically like as simple as your username and the password. So we'll see how we are going to create it. So this is an demo of the access key. So your access key ID look like this, and your secret access key ID will look like something this. And we do not need to share our access key because it is in plain language. It is like your username and the password that you use to connect with your AWS account. Now, what is an AWS CLI, by which we are going to connect to our AWS account using your access key and secret ID. So AWS CLI is a command line tool that, with the help of that, we can interact with AWS services using the command line. As its name suggests, AWS CLI is AWS command line interface, and it has direct access to the public APIs of the AWS service. We can develop the scripts to manage our resources. So let's say, for example, if I need to create 1,000 IAM users, one way is I go to my AWS console, create all the users one by one, right? And second way is let's say, create an Excel of these users, write one script which is reading from that Excel file and creating users. And so if you're doing some automations, so AWS CLI is very useful. And it is alternative to using AWS Management Console. So basically, whatever you are doing from the console, you can do everything from the CLI. You just need to know which command you are using. So here currently, if you see, this is an example of AWS S3 CP, my file, and there. So basically what it is doing is, it is copying one file, myfile.txt, to an S3 bucket named CCP my bucket. So we can do it from the management console. We can do the same thing. So we can create EC2 instance, delete, create S3 bucket, all the things we can do from the AWS CLI. Now, AWS SDK is a software development.
Hello.
Yeah.
So in that case, the that my bucket directory has already been created, right?
Bucket, yes. See,
the CCP my bucket,
yes,
right?
Yes. So this is just an example. Yes, in this case, this bucket should be created. But this is an example of when you upload some file to the S3 bucket from the command line. For that also, your bucket need to be created, right? But you can create your bucket also from the command line.
Yeah. So the LS is using Unix commands, right?
Yes, it's a combination of the Unix command. So it is not exactly the Unix command. There will be a command line reference for the AWS. So let me go through the demo, then we will see all this. So now AWS SDK, now it is one of the SDKs tools that if you are not a developer, that we are not going to use that much. So it's a language specific APIs. So let's say if you are writing a Python based application. Now in that application, you needed some storage, right? So for that, you are going to create an S3 bucket and you are going to upload some file to that S3 bucket. So that thing you can do with the APIs, SDKs that is available, and enables us to access and manage the AWS services programmatically. And it supports JavaScript, Python, PHP, .NET, Ruby, Java, Go, multiple languages. It's selected. mobile SDK, IoT device SDK, and you can see AWS CLI is built on the AWS SDK for Python. So AWS CLI that we are going to use is, in the end, it's using the AWS SDK for Python. So AWS built that solution. So you can basically create your own custom solutions, custom application using the AWS SDK. Okay, so now let's see how we can go and create your access key and connect with your AWS account using the AWS CLI. So I will do most of the thing with the root account because we do not need to manage multiple accounts. So first I'll go to CMD. So if you see AWS, it says AWS is not recognized as an internal or external command. So what we need to do is we need to install AWS CLI for Windows. Install or update the latest version of AWS CLI. So I'll go with the Windows. So it is the installer. Next, it's very simple. There's nothing much in it. Okay, so it's completed the AWS command line setup wizard. So I'll just reopen my AWS account, command prompt. And now if you run, you can see there's now AWS CLI is installed. So with the AWS CLI, there is multiple options that you can do. So first, what you need to do is you need to connect to your AWS account. That is the very first thing that you are going to do. So for example, AWS configure is the first command that you need to run, so that because you are running all these commands from your local computer. So now how AWS will come to know that in which account, let's say you have multiple accounts. So how the command prompt will come to know that in which AWS account I need to perform this action. So you need to configure your AWS account first. So it will ask you the access key ID and the secret access key. So how you can do it, you can go to your security credentials, and there is something called as the access keys. So you go and create the access key. It says root users access key are not recommended. So, but we are just doing it for the learning purpose. So create the access key. Now, very important thing. You once you create the access key and the secret access key, you need to place it somewhere secure, because once it is gone, you will get your access key, but you cannot get your secret access key. Okay, so you need to place it somewhere very secure. I'll just copy this. And the second is AWS secret access key. I'll copy this as well. So it will ask you the default reason name. I'll just say use this one. You can just do the enter also. Now my AWS account has been connected with this. So AWS access key ID and the secret access key is simply like your username and the password. Now whatever I can do from the management console, I can do it from the command line as well. You just need to know the command, right? So for that, again, we do not need to remember all the commands. So there is something called AWS CLI complete reference. So this is command reference, because there are so many commands, so many options that we cannot remember all these commands. So for example, you can see there's a list of the commands. So for example, right now I'll run the command for IAM, because this is the service that we are using. So in the IAM also, you can see there's so many commands. Create user, okay, and then we have delete user, delete policy. All these things you can do from the command line management console. So let's do this list user. What is the command? List users. Okay, so you see all the commands will be written here. AWS IAM list users. So I will run this command. AWS IAM list users. So you can see what option I am getting. Alert. Let's say if I need to delete this user. So what is the command for deleting the user? Delete user. Delete user username. So you can see there are so many flags you can do it, but right now I'm just use this. AWS IAM delete user alert. It says following arguments are required. I missed this.
Forgot that actually for a word, I think.
Hyphen username. It's assigned a value, so that is why it is not creating. It's MFA device is assigned to it. That's why it's not deleting. That's it. Create user. Now you see, if it has created one username row, and if I go to the management console and see the users, now you see there is another user. So basically you can do anything that you're doing from the management console. You can do it from the command line, and generally the structure of the command is first you do start with the AWS, then you need to give the name of the service. So for example, we are dealing with the IAM services here, so then I'm running AWS IAM. If I am let's say if I want to run a command AWS S3, so let's see what is the command for S3. Control F S3. Okay, so let's say I want to list out the buckets in my AWS account. Let's say what is the command? Available command is cp ls. I think it should be ls AWS S3 ls. So you can see I have 3 buckets. Right. So you just need to know which command you need to run, and you can able to do anything from your this command line option as well. Okay, you just need to know how you need to structure your command. So first is it will always start with the AWS. Then you need to give the name of the service, IAM, S3, EC2, VPC, whatever it is. And then you need to give the operation, like what you want to do from this service. For example, here we created a create user, we did a list user on which on IAM. So all these things, you need to structure your command basically, and after that you can able to do all the same things that we are doing it from the management console. Okay, any question? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, now after the users and roles, users, groups and the policy, there is one thing called IAM rules for the services. Okay, now it is somewhat a little confusing when you compare it to other cloud. Generally, roles are used for giving the permission in other cloud, but in AWS, roles has a different meaning. Now, what is the meaning of the role is? So let's say it's basically a very simple thing. So now you see, if you are a physical person, for example, and you want to access the AWS services, for example, you need to access the S3. So what I need to do for you, I will create a IAM user for you. And I am going to assign policies that has the required permission. And once it is done, then you will be able to access the S3, for example. You are able to download the data or whatever you want to do. Now, the second thing is, let's say this is your EC2 instance. Now, on this EC2 instance, you want to connect to this S3. Okay. So for this, you create a IAM role and you assign the policy on the IAM role. So the difference between the user and the role is, user is for physical person, role is for a AWS service which you want to connect to another service. That's the only difference between the user and the role. If you see from the slides, so some AWS service, okay, they want to need to perform actions on your behalf. So let's say I'm on S3. Now I want to download one file from the I'm on EC2 and I want to download or let's say upload one file on S3. So you will run this command AWS S3 upload file on this bucket. Now, how would you determine the permission, right? So for that, a role will be created for it and the role will be assigned to the EC2 instance. After that, EC2 instance will be having access to the connect to the required service. So to do so, we will assign permission to the AWS services with the IAM roles. So the difference between the roles and the users is, role you create for the AWS services, users you create for the physical person. So you, me, there are multiple people in your team. You will create a role, you will create an IAM user for them. Otherwise, so there is multiple compute service. For example, Lambda, CloudFormation. So now CloudFormation is also one of the service which create other resources. But if it does not have the permission to create the resources, how you are going to do it? So in that way also you create a role and assign it to your required service. So I'll just show you a very small demo on this one. More on this we will see on the role once we cover the EC2 or other services. So you can see there's multiple services. So you can see there's already an EC2 S3 role is there. So what you can do is you can create a role. So AWS services. So you need to select your use cases. The commonly used service is EC2 and Lambda, and there's others as well. So let's say EC2 I'm selecting. So in EC2 also there's different options. So I'm just selecting the default. Next. Now again, the policy assignment will happen similarly as you do to your roles, as you do to your IAM users or the group. It is just the role is meant for the AWS services, not for any users. So I'm giving the admin access and next and AWS EC2 admin and create a role. It's very simple. Now, when you create an EC2 instance, you can give that role. So now basically, once you give that role to that EC2 will become the virtual administrator. You can perform anything on your AWS account from that particular EC2 instance that has assigned this role. So that is the purpose of the role. It is being assigned to to an AWS service, not to an IAM users. We will see a complete demo on the roles once we cover the EC2 service. How? So just the basic understanding is enough for now, because if I go and launch EC2 right now, you might have multiple questions. So let's hold the complete demo for the role for now. We will do resume from here once we launch the EC2 instance. But understand this one thing, that role is for the AWS service. Okay. Now, there is two things. There in the security tools, there is credentials report and IAM access advisor. This is basically helps you to maintain the integrity and security of your AWS account. So IAM credential report, a report that lists all your accounts users and status of their various credentials. For example, how we can download the credential report is, so this is the credential report and you can just download the credential report. So currently we do not have much user. But if you open this, let's see. So you can say all the users it is giving the ARM, user create time, password type, password enable. So for example, if you see for row, we have not created the password. We have just say create this user. So password is not enabled. And then when the password last used, all these details you are going to see. So from this report, when you have multiple users in your account, and let's say you do not have a password policy in place, so you can download this Excel, apply some automation on this, and find out that a particular user has not changed its password from last 1 year. So you can send them an email saying that you have not changed your password, re-change it, right? So all these things you can do. Access keys, what are the access keys are there or not? So you can see for the root account user, there is an access key which is created. So all these details we can find it from this credentials report. Now the second report is IAM access advisor. Now the role of IAM access advisor is, let's say you are an user. Okay, let's say row. So when a user is created, it is given multiple permissions. For example, EC2, S3, BPC, RDS, Lambda, Beanstalk, right? It has given multiple permission. Now, as a user, what your work defines, you are only working with EC2, S3, BPC, and RDC. You never work with RDS and Beanstalk, right? So if you never work with RDS and Beanstalk, what is the point of having these permissions, right? So for that, there is something called the access advisor, which will give you an insight that an user is using what type of services. So then you can realign their permission. So if this user is not using any of these services, we can remove these permissions. So that is the role of the access advisor. And from where we can see the access advisor, we can go to the users.
But if the user is not using those services, they are not being charged for it, right?
Yes, of course. Permission is free. You will only charge for, let's say if I have a EC2 permission, but I have not created an instance, I will not be charged. IAM is a totally free service. You can create how many users, you can create the permission, absolutely fine. Until and unless you're not using the service, you will not be charged.
Okay.
Okay. And the very important thing here is the credential report that you see, that is on the account level. So there will be one credential report for the whole account, where you will see all the credential for all the IAM users. But IAM Access Advisor is for the users. You can use different services. I can use different services. So Access Advisor is on a user level basis. So
I think this service, I mean, this part of the thing, like security tools, is used for the audit purpose, right?
Audit purpose, yeah, mostly. So any users you need to go for the access advisor. So it says only allowed service. We have only allowed 2 services like identity and access management and S3. And when they have access, IAM access today and S3 access yesterday. So if you have multiple services assigned and you are seeing that some users are not accessing all the like some of the services, then we can remove those permission from that particular IAM users. And that is comes under the principle of least privileges. So you only need to give the minimum privileges to a particular user that is needed to do its job. So let's say if I assign the Lambda permission to this user and I'm never using the Lambda, then what is the point of having that permission? So access with the help of access advisor, you can fine tune the permissions of your users basically. Okay.
So this access report, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it from the root level, or I can see my one report as a regular?
You can see your report from as a regular user as well.
Okay, but you have to have a permission for that, right?
Yes. Everything is based on the permission. If you have the permission to view it, so let's say on this Albert user, I give the admin permission. So then he or she can do anything. So in AWS, what operations you can do, it boils down to what permission do you have. And in the beginning, we have said that root user should only be used for creating your account. For your daily day-to-day operation, you are not going to use it. You need to create an IAM user. Let's say I create an IAM user and I will be given the admin privileges to that, so that he can see, he can see it, right? So from your account also you can see it. Absolutely not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Now, these are some of the guidelines and the best practices for using the AWS IAM. So as we are saying, do not use the root account except for the account setup. So once your account setup is done, it is advisable not to use your root account for your daily day-to-day operations. Create IAM users, give them the required permission and use them. For one physical user, there will be one AWS user. So let's say currently we have 4 people. So we can create one physical user, one IAM user for each one of them. and let's say 3 of you are um, having the same work. So instead of giving the permission individually to all these 3 users, I should create a group. Let's say create the AWS learners, and I should assign the permissions to that learner group. So always assign users to the group and assign permissions to these groups. And of course, you need to have a strong password policy. Always use and enforce the use of multi-factor authentication. Create and use rules for giving the permission to the AWS services. And we are going to use access key for the programmatical access. And as you said, this is for the audit purpose. So audit permissions of your account using the IAM credential report and IAM access advisor. Okay. And in the last, never share IAM users and access keys, because they are like the username and the password for your AWS account. So to summarize the IAM section, we have seen users, groups, policies. Policies are the JSON document which we define to create the permission for the users and the group. Then we have the roles. Roles, the difference between the roles and the users is a user is created for the physical identity uh, uh, and the roles is for the AWS services. So if AWS services want to access other services, then you need to assign that particular role. Then for the security, we have password policy. You need to have a strong password policy. Plus, on top of that, you can assign MFA. MFA is a secondary authentication mechanism. When applying the MFA, you can actually have an additional authentication mechanism. So someone get hold of your password, they still will not be able to log into their user account. Then we have the CLI to manage your AWS services using the command line. So if you're using the CLI first time, so first you need to install the AWS CLI, then you need to configure with your AWS access key and the secret access key. Then we have the AWS SDKs. SDK is used when you want to call AWS services from your application. So there are multiple languages that AWS support, as AWS SDK support. And for the I audit purpose, we have the credential report and the access advisor. Credential reports is on the account level, while access advisor is per user level. It shows like what user is using what type of services, so we can do a realignment of these services. Now we will start with EC2, and we have completed one AWS service, that is IAM. And it's not like we have finished the service. We will keep using the service again and again when we are using other services. So for example, roles we have seen. So we will do a demo of the role once we are creating the EC2 instance, right? So there's multiple integration will happen, and IAM fundamentals now we know how it integrate with other services. We will keep looking once we are exploring the other services as well. So any questions in IAM, then we will move to EC2. Are we good with IAM?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's start with EC2. Now EC2, I would say it is, as we see, it's a pretty fundamental service. It is like having the virtual server over the AWS cloud. And in EC2, once you launch an EC2 instance, there will be multiple configuration options. So we will see these options one by one. So EC2 is one of the most popular of the AWS offering. And if someone go learn an AWS, this is primarily the one of the very first service they learn, they use. So EC2 is Elastic Compute Cloud, and it is like on-demand computers basically. So whenever you want to have a computer, a virtual machine, you order AWS to create an EC2 instance. So EC2 instance is like renting the virtual machine, storing data in the virtual drive, distributing load in across machines and scaling the services using an auto scaling group. So why we have all these options? Because EC2 is basically an umbrella of services. So inside the EC2, there are multiple services. So for example, EC2 instances, that's the fundamental service. This is the virtual machines. Now we have EBS for block storage, EFS, ALB.
You're sharing the whiteboard.
Yeah. Are you not able to see it?
I can see that. Okay, there you go. I can see it now.
EBS, EFS, then we have ASG, auto scaling group. We have load balancers, different type of load balancers. There are NLB, ALB. So these all type. There are other services as well, like AMI is there. Then snapshot is there, and NIC is there, network interface card. So there's different type of services comes under the EC2 umbrella. So EC2, when we are saying EC2, it is not just about the EC2 instance. So virtual machines are just the EC2 instance, but EC2 covers most of the services. So that is why here we have renting the virtual machine. That is just one part of EC2. We can store our data on the virtual drive. We can distribute the load across but multiple virtual machine, scaling the services using an auto scaling group. This all we are going to cover under the EC2. Okay, so first let's talk about and we will use this EC2 and EC2 instances interchangeably. So whenever I'm saying now on EC2, we are talking about the EC2 instances. Okay, so whenever I'm saying EC2, we are talking about the EC2 instances. Okay, so do not confuse it with other services. Other services we will cover once we cover the EC2 instances. Now, EC2, when you create an EC2, so first thing you need to select is operating system. Second thing is how much compute power and core. So for example, when you go and purchase a laptop, so what thing you need to decide? Either you need a Ubuntu laptop, you need to have a Windows based laptop, or you want to have a Mac based laptop, right? Second thing is you will decide how much RAM your laptop should be having. It's a 8 GB RAM, it's a 16 GB RAM, 32 GB RAM. Then third thing is you define how much data my laptop can handle, 500 GB, 1 TB, 2 TB. Similarly, when you create an EC2, you need to select these configuration options. So first, you need to select the operating system. Either it will be Linux, Windows, or the Mac operating system. How much compute power and core your EC2 instance will be having, how much RAM it will be having, how much storage space it will be having. All these we need to select. Network card, speed of the card, public IP address, firewall rules, all you need to configure. Okay.
So here, to selecting that, right? I mean, we will have hands in our own system, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
do you have any recommendation if we need to go with Windows based or the Mac based?
No. So we will mostly use the Amazon Linux. So I see whatever these options we are seeing, we will see all of these options via the demo only. So theoretically, I'm not very much interested in theory. We will discuss everything from the demo.
Yeah, but we simultaneously we are going to do whatever you demo, right?
No, I think if you do simultaneously, then it will be a little tough because you will be seeing it for the first time. So I'll recommend you to use the recording to do the hands-on. Okay, and if you have any question, we can connect in the next session to do that. Because if you do the simultaneously, you will not probably not up to the speed. So
my main concern here is, okay, so if I follow, I'm not doing simultaneously, but if I follow your demo, right? So in that case, is that anything concernable if I use a Mac operating system and your demo is based upon Windows or something like that? I mean, this question is for all of us, I guess, because if you are using Windows-based demo and we are doing in Mac, is that something different, or you want
No, so yeah,
you want us to follow the same that is being used in your demo?
see, first I want to follow the same that we are doing in the class. After that, you can explore many things. It is not right. We cannot see what you're saying, Windows based or the Mac based. These are the use cases. In the end, they all the EC2, right? So as I said, in 50 hours or 40 hours, we cannot cover each and every use case, right? So we are covering the fundamental about the service. Now, if you use the Linux based, you use the Windows based, you use the Mac based. These are the different use cases. But in the end, they all the EC2 instances. The configuration and everything will remain the same. Either you use.
I think his question is like he's using Windows, I'm using Mac, another one is using.
Okay. So you are saying the laptop. Oh, no. It does not make any difference.
Right, because we are doing it from the
I misunderstood your question. This does not make any difference. Everything you are doing on, you have Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox. We are going to this console and doing everything. So I have Windows based laptop, you have Mac, someone has Ubuntu, does not make any difference.
Okay,
Yeah.
That is kind of
So yes, I thought your question was something different. So yeah, there is no difference, and whenever there will be a difference, I will let you know.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So you need to go to. So everything we do, we are doing it from this console, web console. So it will be same for all of us. So I'll go to EC2. So here also you see in the EC2 instances are just one part. You have auto scaling group, you have elastic IP, load balancer, security group, multiple things. So I'll just, one of my instances is running. Okay, I don't know from how many days it is running. So just one thing, like don't do this mistake that I have done.
Can you minimize the screen a bit?
Minimize means?
Yeah, it's too big.
Okay. Like this?
Yeah, better. Maybe 151. You have the zoom at 173.
This is fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So whatever in EC2 instance you create in this class, once you are done with your practical, terminate those instances. Okay. Otherwise, see, we have limited 750 hours of the EC2 in this free tier account. So if you keep running your EC2 instances, then it is like it will consume your free tier capacity. So this is the EC2 instance dashboard. What you need to do is you need to go and launch the instance. And we will see all the options. So first is number of the instance. If you want to create multiple instances, you just need to give the number here. So let's say 10 or 100, whatever it is. And here you need to give the name of the instance. So I'll say demo EC2. Now the very first thing, you need to select the application and the OS image. Okay. So here there is multiple OS images is available. Linux, Mac OS, Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, SUS Linux. So you need to select. So if I select Mac OS, my EC2 instance will be the Mac machine. If I select Ubuntu, my EC2 instance will be the Ubuntu based, and Windows and so on. So generally for the demo purpose, I will keep it as the Amazon Linux. So that is the first step, choosing your operating system. Then after this, there is something called the instance type. Okay. Now there is multiple instance type is available with the AWS. the purpose of the instance type is to assign. Hello.
Richard,
Yeah.
I can't see the left side of the screen. That's the problem.
Left side as the problem.
I said I can't see it. I just see the summary.
I can see the whole thing.
That is, you are only seeing the summary.
Okay.
Is this the same problem with everyone?
No, I can see the full screen.
Yeah, I don't have any issue.
Okay, I'm dragging it. It's okay.
Okay. So the instance type is where we define the number of the cores of CPU and the RAM. So currently, as you know, we are in a free tier. So this is the T2.micro is selected for us, 1 vCPU and 1 GB memory. But if you select on compare instance type, there is multiple options you have. So you have 16 GB memory, 4-core CPU, T2.x large, T2.2x large, T3.nano. So there is multiple sizes of customized option available with the EC2. So you can see there is 510 type of instance is available in EC2, but we will select T2.micro. So that is the second option we select. Third option basically, the number of the instance, the application and operating system image, and the instance type. Okay, so I will start with this, and eventually we will go cover. There are multiple other options as well, but we will start eventually with them as well. So instance type is give you the number of the CPU core and the amount of the RAM your instance is going to have. You just click on the here. This is one more thing. There is something called the key pair. So key pair is being used if you want to log in. So let's say if you are using putty to log into your Linux instances, so then you need the key pair. So what I'll do is I will create the new key pair, name it as the same demo EC2. The key pair already exists. Demo EC, I will name it, and just keep the name temp and create the key pair. That's it. Now I will launch the instance.
Can you hold on 1 second? Oh, sorry, you did. That's fine.
Okay, no problem. You can ask a question.
Yeah, quick question. So from the IMA, from the instance type, right? Like T2 micro, T2. How do we decide like which one we need? Like, for example, like if I'm working on something, how do I decide? Is it like guidance? Like, okay, if you do something, you should pick this and something like that. Any guide or something?
No.
Somewhere?
So see, there will be no guide, but there are different generations. Okay, so let's cover it now here only. So there is something called here is not EC2 instance type. Yeah. Okay. So first, let me give you this page. Now here, if you see, we have a slide for that as well. Let's cover it here only. So there is different type of EC2 instances available. As you can see, general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, escalated computing, storage optimized, high performance computing optimized. And in general purpose also, there are multiple, we call it as the instance family, M7I, M7E. So if you can see here, the general purpose instance provide a balance of compute, memory, and the networking resources, and can be used for a variety of the diverse workload. But let's say if you go to the compute optimized instances are ideal for compute bound application that benefit from the high performance processors. Instance belonging to this category are well suited for the batch processing workload, media transporting, high performance web server, high performance computing, scientific modeling, dedicated gaming server, and server engine. Similarly, we have storage optimized and memory optimized. So there will be use cases. So for example, if you are running a database based application, or example, if you're running a database, okay, so then you need to select a storage based storage optimized operating system, or storage optimized EC2 instance. So storage optimized instances are designed for workload that require high sequential read and write access to very large data set on the local storage. So that now you know that you need to select a storage optimized, and in storage optimized there are these families. So that is one thing. First, you need to zero down on what type of instance you need to select based on your use case. So if you are, let's say, running a big data use case, then you can select the compute optimized instances. If you are running an application that is very memory intensive, then you need to select the memory optimized EC2 instance. Similarly, for the high performance computing and escalated computing. Now, let's say if you're running a general web server, so then you can select the general purpose instances. Now, in general purpose instances, there are these families. Okay. Now, each instance family will have its own feature. And in each family also, you will find a type of CPU and the memory. So first, we will zero down on what type of instance we need to select. Then based on your application. So now selecting the memory and CPU core RAM, there will not be no guidelines because that will completely depend on your application. So that you need to decide with your application team. So for example, if your application, sometimes your application requires 6 GB of RAM, right? They consume more memory. So you need to select the instance type based on your application. There will not be no guidelines regarding the selecting the size of the application, size of the EC2 instance. It will completely depend on the type of your application that you are running. So let's say if I'm running a web server, web server. Now I can run the web server with this T2 dot. Now in the T2 there is multiple size: T2 nano, T2 micro, T2 small, T2 medium. So we have started with this T2 micro. In this there is one CPU and one memory, right? So for example, we started with this T2 micro. In this, I'm running Nginx, for example. Nginx is a simple web server. Now, when I run it, users will start hitting this request. After some time, you have observed that load is keep getting increasing. Right? Now, it has only 1 GB memory, 1 CPU core. It can handle, let's say hypothetically, only 100 requests. But now you are getting 500 requests. So then you need to upgrade it to T2 medium, for example. Now on the T2 medium also you are running the Nginx only, but based on the load, you need to upgrade your size. Okay. So to select what size of the EC2 instance you need to select while creating and launching the instance, you need to keep your application in mind, what type of application you are running, what type of load it will be getting once it is up and running. So based on those parameters, you need to select the instance type. There will not be general guidelines regarding that. For me, T2 micro can be a good option because I'm getting, let's say, for example, 50 requests per minute. But if you are getting 500 requests per minute, then T2 micro will not be a good choice for you, even though you and me both are running the same application. Right?
So, for example, hypothetically, 50, like you say, like a T2 micro can do 50, right? Is there any, I mean, how do you calculate that? Is there any, like, say, okay, this CPU core can take this many requests or something like that? Or like, how do you monitor that?
Okay, so for that, you need to decide on what type of application you are running. So for example, if I'm running on an Nginx, okay, so
right,
then you need to go to Nginx documentation and see what is the minimum hardware requirement for this. So that will depend on underlying application what you are running.
Makes sense.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
And if you are running, let's say, you develop a Java-based application and you are running that Java-based application on your EC2 instance. Then your application architect will tell you that how much CPU and memory it required.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks.
So now if I go to my instances, you can see now the instance is up and running. So what we can do is there is something called the instance state. So either I can stop this instance, I can reboot this instance. Reboot means you can restart the instance, and terminate the instance means you can delete the instance. Okay, so these all things you can do with your instance. Now if you go and you can see there is an option of connect to that instance. So if I connect on it, there is multiple options of connecting to your EC2 instance. So right now I'll just go with the instance connect, and later on we will see the SSH client as well, how we can log into our instance using from your local computer. Now if you connect with the EC2 instance connect, what you need to do is you need to just click on the connect, and your device you will be connected to your EC2 instance. You need to connect. Okay, and now you are connected to your EC2 instance and you can do perform anything. Sudo yum update, anything you can do. Let's say Java is not there, I'll install Java.
I looked in the mirror then and did not like what I saw. I decided to make a change. Ever. By self-done, it's just like it's for venture breath.
There is a background noise coming on.
Yeah. So basically now it is your server. You can do anything on that server. Okay, anything means what it will allow you based on the limitation of this server. So it's a Linux based system. If I run the uname -a, okay, it's a Linux based server, and we can do all those things which you can do on an on-premises Linux server. So that is how you are going to launch your instance. Okay, so we have selected the three things: operating system, how much compute power in the cores, and how much RAM. Okay, storage we will cover later on. Now there is something called the bootstrap script. So let me terminate this one and I'll create another instance. Bootstrap demo. Simple, number of the instance 1, Linux 1, and everything same. Now there is something called if you go to advanced detail, there is something called the user data. Okay, now what is user data? Let's say you want to configure your EC2 instance with some customization, with some softwares. So you can give those commands, those script here, and your EC2 instance will be launched with those customizations. So for example, previous instance that we run was not having the Java, right? If you need to install the Java on your system, you can run those scripts in the user data field. User data, if you click on the info, specify a user data to provide command or a command script to run when you launch your instance. So let's say if I run here sudo yum install Java. So this command will run when you are launching your instance for the first time. So when you launch it, it will launch and it will run this command. So when you connect it to your EC2 instance, this will already be installed on your system. So that is we call as a user data script, bootstrap script. So it is like if you want to do any customization, changing the permission or anything, right? It's like setting up your server. Okay, So if at the time of setting up your server, you want to do some of the things, you can do it with the help of this user data. So let's launch the instance. I'll select the same key pair and launch the instance. So now this instance should have this Java installed. So let's wait for some time. Now if I connect to it, I have given the wrong command. User data script. Just run this. Let me launch another instance. Website, same Linux t2.micro key pair. I will allow HTTPS traffic also, and in the user data. So what this is doing, it is updating HTTPD and it's starting the HTTPD. HTTPD is like the web server. It should be Amazon Linux only. Yeah, and launch the instance. Now I'll wait for some time. Now if you open the address, let me connect to it. Yeah, it is running. What's the command? systemctl. Oh, it should be sudo. No, it says failed to start. Apache HTTP server. Yeah, it is running. You see, hello world from compute internal. So with the help of user data, I have given this script basically. This script, I will paste it in the chat.
A quick question. So this script will run only when you start the instance, right?
Yes, only at the boot up time of this
Not on the
instance. Not yeah. So basically, it is for the configuring when you are. So I will just make some changes here. Put up the sudo before the systemctl command. That is one thing missing. Right. So with the help of user data script, you do not need to connect and configure your instance again and again. You will just put up whatever the command and script you have in the user data field, and while launching up the instance, those commands will be run and your system will be configured as and when required. So that is the purpose of this bootstrap script. User data. So it is possible to bootstrap our instances using an EC2 user data script. Bootstrap means launching command when a machine starts, and the script is only run once at the instance first start. Okay, so when you are starting your instance for the very first time, then this is going to run, and you can have those installing update, installing the software, downloading common files from the internet, and like we can do anything. So if you can create a script for that, that script we can provide in the user data, and those script will run.
What are you doing in my room? I need my room.
Right now, so we launch our virtual server using the console, various parameter. Okay, so we have seen how to start, stop, and terminate our instance, and web server is launched using the EC2 user data. Now there is a very important point as well, instance overview. So we can use the different type of EC2 instance that are optimized for the different use cases. So the naming convention will be something like that: M5.2x large. M is the instance class, fifth is the generation, and 2x large is the size within that instance class. I'm again iterating this, and don't stress too much about the instance type, because you do not remember that there is so many instance types are available. Just first look down on your use cases. If it is a storage use case, if it is a computing use case, if you have a general use case. So then once you zero down on the type of the instance you need to select, then basis on that, you if you are running a standard product, read the hardware documentation for that, like what is the minimum hardware requirement for that product. And if you are running a customized application that is developed by the in-house team, then you need to have a discussion with the application architecture. What is the hardware requirement to run that particular application? What type of load it is getting, and based on that, we will be selecting the instance type and the instance size.
Is there any interview? Sorry, not interview. Is there any exam question related to that, like the certification, like any instance type, like when to use what? Because
yeah,
it's very hard.
Yes. So see, I will give you the examination question in the end. But see, in the exam, you will be getting the scenario based question. Every question will be at least 4 to 5 lines. Okay. Now what happens is you can get a scenario like now there is a company which have multiple let's say 100 TB of data, and you want to perform some data analysis on this type of instance. So what type of instance you are going to use? Now this is a memory intensive application, right? If you're running a big data, so it's a compute optimized purpose. So that type of question, scenario based question, you are going to find that examination.
Okay, so I have to just memorize these, like
just the use case. So we have mentioned all the use case in the slide. So for the general purpose, it's great for diversity of the workload. So in the examination, the tip from my end is always look for the keywords in your question, and basis on the keyword you can easily zero down answer. And second thing is If you are not sure what is the right answer, eliminate the wrong answers. So that is like the most easy part. So if there is 4 option, and if you are sure that 2, and first you are not sure what is the right answer. So instead of choosing between the 4, first figure out what cannot be right.
Yep. Makes sense. Thanks.
So general purpose is great for diversity of the workload. So it's basically, if you do not know what type of use case you are running, general purpose is always the best practice. It's a best choice, right? It's a balance between the compute, memory, and networking, all type of storage. So we already using the T2.micro, which is a general purpose EC2 instance. But apart from T2, the new is T3, T3A, Mac, T4G, multiple instances are available. Then we have the compute optimized. Now you see there are these use cases. Now, if you are getting these buzzword in your question, the answer would be the compute optimized, right? So it is good for the batch processing workload, media transporting, high performance web server, high performance computing, dedicated game server, scientific modeling. And one thing is, and in the examination, they will not ask you that you are going to use C6G or C6GM or C5. So we do not need to remember these families basically. Okay, and no one in the interviews is also going to ask about these families. They will just ask you, given a scenario, what type of instance you are going to use. So you'll say, I use compute optimized, memory optimized, or something like that. For the memory optimized, you can see high performance. So whenever you are going to see a database, it's a memory optimized workload. Fast performance for the workload that process large data sets in memory. Distributed webs, scale cache stores in memory databases, right? So wherever you see data or database, it will be memory optimized instance. Then we have a storage optimized, great for the storage and intensive task that requires high sequential read and write access to large data set on the local storage. High frequency online transaction processing, relational or NoSQL database, cache for in-memory databases, data warehousing. So all these use cases are for the storage optimized. So instance type example we have seen, CPU, memory, storage. Storage we will cover EBS only. EBS is elastic block storage, and network performance. So sometimes you need to select basis on the network performance also. You can see C4, C5D, 4x largest up to 10 Gbps. So there could be multiple factors. And this is, if you see, go to this website, instance.vintage.sh. So there is a comparison of the price, the instance memory, instance storage. So someone actually created this website. It's a very handy to use it. So you can do the pricing unit, memory, cost, hourly. So you can do all those instances at one page only. So just go walk through it in some time. But you do not need to remember all these details. It's not needed. Okay. Now there is a very important concept of the security groups. What happens is, security groups are the fundamental of network security in AWS. They control how traffic is flowed into or out of our EC2 instance. Security group only contain the allow rules. So what happens is, let's say, for example, this is my EC2 instance. So by default, I'll do one thing. Currently, if you see, why it is going to HTTPS. Currently, you see, I am able to run getting a response from this server, but the default conditions are deleted. But now if I refresh it, so this is the default condition. Okay. So by default, all the traffic that is coming to your website is blocked. So this is your this is an EC2 and there is your web server running, right? So all the traffic coming to your web server or basically on your EC2 instance is blocked by something called as the security group. So security group is like the virtual firewall which you can place with the EC2 instance, which blocks all the traffic. Okay, so as I go through the slides as well, security group are the fundamental of the network security in AWS. They control how traffic is flowed into and out of the EC2 instance. So by default, all the inbound traffic is blocked. So if you want to allow some traffic, you need to explicitly allow it. And security group rules can be referenced by the IP and any security group. So let's understand this from the demo. So the fundamental thing is here, when you create an EC2 instance, all the traffic coming to that EC2 instance will be blocked by something called as the security group. And if you are running your application on a particular port, you need to allow that traffic explicitly. So how we are going to do it? So you can see currently I cannot reach to my web server, which is running on my EC2 instance. So what you need to do is first I'll start from the beginning. So this is my web server. So what you need to do is you need to go to security, and there you see with every EC2 instance, there will be a security group attached. Okay. In the security group, there will be inbound rule and there will be outbound rule. So by default, only the port 22 is allowed and port 443 is allowed. So web servers listen on port 80. So we need to add a rule to allow the port 80 to access the EC2 instance. So I'll click on the security group. And here you can see there is the inbound rule and the outbound rule. So inbound rule, I will edit it. Now you need to define a add rule. Here you can say the custom HTTP we want to do. So if you select the HTTP, by default 80 will come, and source also you can select. Source is anywhere IPv4, anywhere IPv6, or you can select this my IP. My IP, if I'll select, I will be able to connect it from only from my IP. And here also you can select the custom. You can, let's say, select from a particular network, from a particular service. We can do all of this. But let's say currently I am giving is anywhere IPv4. Now, when I save the rule, what happens is there is a rule created which is allowing the traffic for port 80. So when I'm coming to the web server, it will allow me. So if you hit it again, you can see. So you can assign, basically you can control the flow of the network traffic, how you are going to do it with the help of these security groups. So security group are acting as the firewall on the EC2 instance, and we can access to the port, authorized IP ranges, control of the inbound network, and control to the outbound network. We can completely control the flow from the security groups. Any question? Yeah.
Yes. Do you have a specific slide for the CIDR group later? CIDR. The CIDR range, like CIDR range.
Oh,
do you have
okay.
a specific
No, actually, we do not have a, but once we cover the networking, I can give you the documentation regarding it and we can discuss from the basics. So that we will cover in the networking. Okay. So security thing is, it can be attached. So once you create a security group, it can be attached to multiple instances. So for example, you are running 2 web servers. Okay. So one thing, let's say this is your second EC2, second web server. One thing is you can create a security group for this. You can create a security group for this. Okay. So in that case, you need to individually manage all the security group, but that will be very complex when you are dealing with the more number of the virtual machines, right? So instead of it, if they are serving the same purpose, you can create a common security group. You can create a common security group and attach it to the multiple VM. Now on the security group, port 80 is open, right? So traffic can go to here, traffic can go to here. So if they are serving, so let's say if you are having multiple EC2 instance, which is having the same functionality, you can create a common security group and assign it to multiple EC2 instances. Then log down to a region and the VPC combination. So if you, as we discussed, there are services which are region scoped. So let's say if you have a web server in US East 1 region and a second web server in another region. So for another region, you need to create another security group. Okay. And VPC is another, if you have different virtual private cloud. So security group cannot span across multiple VPCs. For different networks, you need to have a different security group. And it does live outside the EC2. If the traffic is blocked, the EC2 store won't see it. So you can say, if you delete this EC2 instance, if you delete this, then also this security group will be there. So you can attach it to other instances as well. So the life cycle of the security group is independent of your EC2 instances. And it is good to maintain one security group for the SSH access. So now, as we say, all inbound traffic is blocked by default, right? So since the all inbound traffic is blocked, you cannot SSH also to your servers because SSH listens on port 22. So you can create a common security group for all the servers, okay, which is allowing the port 22 basically. And if your application, and this is very important thing, if your application is not accessible, you are getting a timeout error, then 99% is it is a security group issue. Somewhere your traffic is getting blocked by the security group. But if you're getting some other error, then it's an application related error. But if you're getting a timeout error somewhere in AWS, it is 99% it's a security group issue. And you can see all inbound traffic is blocked by default and all outbound traffic is authorized by default. Now there is one interesting scenario we can say. We can see that one EC2, one security group can be attached to multiple EC2 instances, but we can attach multiple security group to one instance as well. So this is your EC2 instance. So I can attach one here, then this, then this. I can attach multiple security group also. So it's an example of diagrammatical representation of the security group. You have different security group. One is assigned to this EC2. This is assigned to one EC2. So here you need to have the complete reference from the security groups as well. So when you define the security groups, so for example, now this is your EC2 instance and this is your EC2 instance. Now there will be one security group assigned to it, and let's say there is one security group assigned to it. Now you want to connect from here to here, right? But you know all inbound traffic is default. So what we can do is we can reference in this security group that all incoming traffic coming from this security group should be allowed. So that way we can do it. And how we are going to do it? You can go in a security group. Let's say you do the edit inbound rule. You say any security group, let's say coming on your database is running on 529 port, for example. Now you want from a particular security group. So here you can see all the list of the security group that you can find. So whatever EC2 instance attached with this security group, they have an inbound access to this 529 port. So that way your instances is going to connect to one another. Then we have these classic ports. These are the fixed port. Okay, so when you run your application, okay, you can run your application on any of the customized port. There is no fixed rule. Okay, but there are some applications, some protocol that runs on the fixed port. So if you want to connect to your server using the SSH, it runs on port 22. You cannot change it. It's fixed. Similarly, FTP run on port 21, SFTP run on port 22, HTTP run on port 80, HTTPS run on port 443, and RDP run on port 3389. It's good to remember these ports because you are going to use them on a day-to-day basis. And we can see this from here also. There is, apart from custom port, there's so many classic ports are there. So if you select IMAP runs on port 143. If you select LDAP runs on 389. So these are the fixed port. SMB runs on port 445. Sometimes some people ask in the interviews about these common port, like on which protocol, which port SMB protocol run. So it's good if you can just see a walkthrough of these. MySQL runs on 1433. Most of the time they ask about FTP, SFTP, HTTP, HTTPS, and the RDP protocol. RDP, so SSH is a protocol being used to access the Linux instances, while RDP is used for connecting to the Windows-based instances. This is, you see. Okay, so how to SSH into EC2 instance, Linux or the Mac OS agent? So we have seen one way is I can go and I can connect with the instance connect, but that is not a very good practice actually. And if you have multiple instances, how you are going to open all these tabs? So the generally we follows is the SSH client. Okay, so in the SSH client, so putty is a good example of the SSH client. So we need to download the putty. Download putty. So I'll just install the putty. And I need one more thing, which is called the puttygen also. I'll install both of it. It's putty installer. Okay. Now what you need to do is, if you remember, we have downloaded this key file, demoec.pem. Okay. So first what you need to do is you need to open the puttygen, load your file. You can download the direct PPK as well, but just for demo purpose, I'm showing you. I'll go to download, select the all files, and I select my .pem file. So if you have downloaded the .ppk file, so then we do not need to do this step. But since we have downloaded the .pem file, we need to convert it to the .ppk. So I'll once it is loaded, you will select the private key. So I'll select it, and you see this is now saving as the save as type putty private key .ppk. So I can name it anything, does not matter, but I'll select it as a demo EC only, and where it is, it's saving in the download only. Now I have the .ppk file. I'll go open putty. So here, first thing is you need to give this here. You need to give this, okay, and you need to go to SSH auth credential and browse for your PPK in the downloads PPK, and you open this, accept this, and you can see I have logged into my server. Very simple, nothing we need to do. But if you're connecting with the Mac, so you can do the similar way that I have done. You can download the putty, and from the putty you can use your the steps that we have done. But if you are on the Mac, you can simply open the terminal and run this command. Nothing else you need to do, and you just need to run the command wherever this PEM file is present. You just need to run this, and from your terminal you will be able to connect to this EC2 instance. Nothing else you need to do. So that is how we are going to connect it from the your SSH client. Clear?
Yeah, I think only thing we have to do is just change the permission to 400, right? Before we use the
Yes,
Mac.
that one thing you can do. Yes, that's the general thing. Yeah. Second is let's say if you this is a Linux based instance, so I'll create a Windows based instance also, and we will see how we can connect to it. Windows. So for selecting the Windows base, what you need to select is the operating system image should obviously be of Windows, and I'll select the same key, demo EC, and you can see here, since it is a Windows base, it is allowing the RDP traffic, and I will launch the instance. So instance, I'm terminating all these website and bootstrap demo. Terminate. Windows is pending. Now it is running. I'll click on it, and there is an option of connect. Now there is something called the RDP client. You can connect it from the serial console also, but we can do with the RDP client. Here you need to download the remote desktop file. That is the first thing. But the username is the administrator. We need to get the password. So for getting the password, what you need to do is get password, decrypt the password. Oh, okay. Please wait at least 4 minutes after launching an instance. So we will just wait for 2 more minutes, I think. And then once you decrypt the password, download the remote desktop file. Once you open the remote desktop file, you can connect. And here you need to give the password. Okay. The password from where we are going to get it from this get password option. Now you need to upload the same file .pem and decrypt the password. So this is my password, and I'll give the password here and okay. Yes. And you can see now I have connected to my Windows based EC2 instance as well. So you observed one thing here. We are using the same key for the multiple instances, so that it is allowed, and you can set up different keys also. But one key you can use to log into multiple instances as well. It will take 1 or 2 minutes to set up the instance, and your Windows-based virtual machine will be up and running in no time. So that is how we are going to connect with the Windows-based instances. Instance connect also we have seen. Okay, now purchasing option we will cover in the next class.
Before you leave, one question: what is the use case of using Mac instance? I see, like on that instance type, you can pick Mac, right?
Okay, so
Is
yes. So see, there could be multiple use cases, but I'll give you one example. And this example I have recently encountered. So I was working with a client, and we are migrating to AWS. Okay, the problem was there was a team for the iOS developers. Now, iOS development you can only do on the Mac machines, right? So now this is one of the use case. So if your application has a Mac dependency, they cannot develop outside the Mac, then you can select Mac. But the most popular, I would say, is still the Linux-based flavor, which caters for most of the use cases. Windows-based, again, we use if we are running with the .NET-based application or some Windows-based dependencies. And for iOS development, you can use the Mac-based agent.
okay, great, thanks.
I recently encountered it. So if you have asked me, like in my previous batch, probably I have to think about it. But right now I encountered it. I just implemented it last week. So yeah. So yeah.
Chuck,
Yes.
Roger, is there any reason my screen is blank?
I am not sure. Others can see the screen, right,
Yeah,
Abdullah?
we can see that. Yeah, I can see the screen.
Not sure. So yeah, next we will cover more thing about the EC2. So EC2 pricing is not that simple, and there you are going to get multiple questions on the pricing in the examination and as well as in the interviews question. So like we say, pay as you go model. Like whatever you are consuming, you are going to get bill for it. But EC2 pricing is little complex. There are multiple purchasing options are there. So we need to understand like what could be the optimized way to set up the EC2 for your organization. So there are multiple purchasing options are available. We will compare into them. We will see the use cases of them. So that we will cover now in the next class. Okay, let me terminate this Windows-based instance as well. And guys, whenever you are doing any practice with the EC2 instance, please terminate after you are done. If not terminate, if you want to save the state, let's say you are doing, we will do it like when we do the load balancing and all. So then, and at that time, you need to like save the EC2 instance for the next hands-on as well. If not terminated, then please stop them. Do not keep them running. Otherwise, your 750 hours will be consumed with one EC2 instance only in a month, right? So then you have to create another account. So that's a limitation of the free tier. So once you're done with the hands-on, if not needed, please terminate it. If we needed the EC2 instance for the next hands-on or the assignment, then please shut it down.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.